Hello, everybody. So I just want to go over an attack that is going on against Airbnb right now on Twitter, with a lot of people claiming and retweeting this popular tweet saying, "Oh, revenue is way down for Airbnb hosts. Airbnb is in trouble. Hosts are in trouble. This is a market collapse." And of course, fear being what it is, us being humans, we're attracted to fear, and fear gets the lion's share of the coverage on Twitter. And so, one city that's pointed out is Sevierville, Tennessee, saying, "Oh, look, it's down 48% year over year in one market," and there's other markets where it's down. And it's very easy to create these fearful headlines. You take a spreadsheet, you go on all the rooms, the website, you download all the data, you take a spreadsheet, and then you sort that spreadsheet, and you make the worst numbers go up front, and then you take the top 10 worst numbers, you publish it into a screenshot, and boom, you create fear and you create the buzz. That is how these things work. Actually, something very similar happened to Open Door about a year and a half, and it led to crazy comments, things like, "Oh, people are never going to buy homes again, mortgage rates are at 7%, etc." There's a lot of fear driving the internet, but especially real estate. People like to be fearful and make fearful headlines. I just want to share a few facts about Airbnb as to why I'm not worried at all, and I'm happy to own Airbnb as a top 10 stock for me. So it's going to be less structured because a few people watch my Airbnb videos, only a few people watch them, but nonetheless, I hope you can learn something. So Airbnb, here are some facts about Airbnb. Airbnb is not just the US. We live in the US, we're US-centric, Twitter is US-centric, but there's other places in the US, and of course, for Airbnb, it's going to become much more meaningful. Airbnb is going to be one of these companies like McDonald's, where the rest of the world is much more meaningful than the US, and it's just at the tipping point where they have more housing outside of the US than the US. I'll get into that in a second, but right now they're present and they're exerting a lot of effort to grow in 220 countries and regions. So much more than just the US, even though the US is where they got started, and that's why they're so prevalent in the US. Airbnb is spending a lot of efforts currently, for example, growing two markets, including Brazil and Germany. So Brazil is up more than 100%, Germany is up 70%. And of course, just look at these two markets, right? The world is 8.4 billion people, the world. Just these two markets in Germany and Brazil, you have 299 million folks. So that's almost the size of the US in these two markets, and they're growing. If you average them out, very close to triple digits is what they're growing. So there's a lot of triple-digit growth happening at Airbnb outside of the US. Here's another thing that if you follow the stock of Airbnb, you'd know. Sevierville, and using country listings, right? For example, using Austin, Airbnb, when they look at the Austin area, they classify it as very, very country. You have a lot of country in Austin, like Liberty Hill and all these cities. They're very much in the country. Traveling in the country, that was in style back in 2020, 21, 22. It is not in style anymore. Now it's very urban destinations that are back in style. And this is the swings of a pendulum, right? Trends in travel change all the time. Of course, in 2021, everybody wanted to go in the country, and that's why places like Tennessee really boomed. So now they're going through a down phase. But look at places like New York City. They're exploding. It's insane. And of course, it's not in those top 10s. 20%, roughly 20% of Airbnb stays, by the way, are longer than 28 days. And this is an area, if you listen to the conference call of Airbnb, you know that Joe Gebbia is trying to grow really fast the long stays, renting a full home through Airbnb. 20% is meaningful. Airbnb has long tried to set it up, and it is clearly succeeding, in my view, at setting itself up to compete against mom-and-pop renters that sign a regular lease. That's what Airbnb is trying to do. They're trying to to compete against, those people who rent a house for 1 year for a 12-month lease. To me, that's going to be the lion's share of the business in a lot of developed countries, especially if you get out of the cities. That's what they're gearing themselves up towards, because renting through Airbnb affords protection for the landlord and for the tenant that cannot be afforded through each state's legal system. Airbnb is creating its own layer of trust, a trust layer above the transaction, and this layer of trust is very, very, very powerful. If you rent to someone and they have, 100 reviews on Airbnb, it makes it very, very easy for you to trust them. Airbnb dematerialized or at least added a layer above the law on trust, and I think that's a key part of the success of Airbnb is the trust that we are creating between two parties that don't know each other. By the way, Airbnb keeps growing very fast. Airbnb grew its listing by 18% year over year, and keep in mind their site can accommodate more people than the entire U.S. hospitality industry. They passed that number of rooms in Q3. And this is so important to understand that it would be impossible for any country to increase their hospitality industry capacity by 18% in 1 year. You can't build 18% more hotels rooms in 1 year. You can't. Maybe you can do 1%. Tops, you can do 1% more hotel rooms. With the two-sided platforms, with a two-sided marketplace, Airbnb is able to create hospitality and housing like it's never been created before, because it is using idle capital that doesn't do much. And an example, for example, is you have someone and they rent a house, and there's an evictions ban for almost 2 years in some area, and they can't evict. Do you think that person is ever going to want to rent that house again? Right? A lot of people don't want to rent through a traditional system again. That's why they go to Airbnb, because they don't trust the traditional rental lease system. They don't trust. They don't think that system has their best interest at heart. By the way, that is true for both sides. It is not just the landlords who don't trust it. It is the tenants sometimes who don't trust it. Maybe you want to live in a house, but you can't live in a house because you can't find a landlord that won't rent it to you for at least 12 months. They want to sign a 12-month lease. Airbnb solves that by adding a layer of trust on top of that experience, and they do that with a $3 million protection. They have a whole sorts of different protections. Also noteworthy is whenever you take data from the US to say that Airbnb is doing very poorly, you need to keep in mind that the US is not the growth area for Airbnb. The US is now growing slower. What's growing very fast for Airbnb is EMEA, Asia Pacific, Latin America. These are the regions that are growing really, really fast for Airbnb. And like I said, we are just, this data is a little bit old, but we are just past the moment where Airbnb has more business outside of the US than they have inside the US, and that's a major deal, And lastly, another piece of fear that is spread right now is that yes, many cities are fighting Airbnb. Airbnb is having its Uber moment, and if you remember Uber and Lyft, a lot of cities banned them. New York City comes to mind. Austin actually comes to mind as a city that banned Uber and Lyft. And what happens is that we know these bans. And oftentimes they're moratoriums, by the way. We know these bans, they last 18 months, 24 months. They don't last forever because you can't go against the trend. This is the trend of the day. This is what people prefer. This is what Gen Z prefer. This is the Gen Z preferred way of doing things. Go on younger social media like Instagram, like TikTok. There's dedicated YouTube channels with millions of subscribers, dedicated Instagram accounts with millions of subscribers. Airbnb as a side hobby, as an inspiration website. This is a powerful tech trend as well as a powerful cultural trend. And so all I have to say about this is that the taxi industry, they fought very hard against Uber. And in some parts of the world, they were able to fight for something like 5 years. And they lost, of course. And what I want to say is kudos to the hospitality industry to fight for their fight as well. They're fighting and it makes a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, in my view, tech is tech. And tech created trust. Tech created induced demand, right? Housing that wasn't there before. And you're also going to have likely a lot of underinvestment in hospitality and hotels now that Airbnb is there. You're going to have a lot of lower investment in those setups and those systems. And you have a commercial real estate crisis brewing, and also it's true that the hotel industry is doing a few things like resort fees, like, for example, not cleaning the sheets every day anymore. We are doing a lot of things that show you that they are in a exploiting the advantage, right, moment. They are in a rent-seeking moment, which is not the case for Airbnb, at least in my view, and that's why I'm very happy to invest in this product adoption. The service is getting adopted, the product is getting adopted worldwide, and whether one hates or doesn't like it, that's not investing. Investing is, can you see the trend? Can you see this trend getting adopted? And I see this trend getting adopted all over. Investors clearly love it. Gen Z clearly loves it. Doesn't matter if I don't love it or if I love it. I think it's the future. It's the way the world is headed. Last point, and this is somewhat related, but I saw a piece of FUD and I got a few questions about this in the comment section. Some people say because of course Gen Z is a major customer of Airbnb. Some people say, will student loans hurt? And in a nutshell, I don't think so. If anything, I think the return of student loans will push people with student loans to go get them refinanced. Like they've always done, and that's typically how people have always managed student loans, is they get them refinanced. So maybe you haven't looked at your student loans for 3 years and you see that they're a little high, and so what do? Well, you just get them refinanced, and money is fungible. People are going to be spending more on student loans. A smaller share of the population, right? Student loans are a very US-centric topic, and Airbnb is an international company, and of course not everybody has student loans, but money is fungible. So if you have to have, I don't know, an extra $500 payment a month, that money is fungible, which means it's gonna come from something. You can't make the assumption it's gonna come from Airbnb. Maybe it's going to come from, instead of doing an Airbnb in Europe, you're gonna do an Airbnb in the US because it's cheaper. Or maybe it's going to come in the form of, I'm going to look at all of my Netflix type subscriptions and reduce a few, right? Money's fungible. It's not entirely logical, or at least it's a tenuous link to say, because student loans come back, I conclude that they will rent less on Airbnb. All you can say is that there will be a little less money in the economy, but it's almost impossible to hypothesize on the direction of where that money will be removed. Airbnb, in my view, international company, and it's still the cheapest options for groups, for family travel, and perhaps even for people looking for a more luxury type of experience travel. So anyways, this is not investment advice. This is just entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Appreciate your likes. Appreciate your subscribes. Thank you for watching.